In today's video, I'm going to be painting a simple watercolour flower with just one brush. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Michelle. On this channel, we do all things watercolour as well as drawing and mixed media. Please do consider subscribing. Unlike many channels here on YouTube, we are fully cat approved. So today I'm going to take you through the painting of a really beautiful red tulip. We're going to use just one brush. It's going to be a really easy tutorial, fantastic for beginners or experienced artists to follow along with. So let's jump straight in. So here's the photo I've chosen. It's a beautiful red tulip. I'm going to be using this one brush. It's a size 12. It's a nice new one, so it's got a point. I'll leave details in the description of this video of all the materials I'm using and also where you can grab this photograph from. We'll choose the colours later, but I'm going to start by sharpening this pencil, but I'm going to start by doing the drawing. I've got a 5B pencil here. I'd probably advise you to use one a little less dark and soft, but as always on YouTube, I need you to be able to see the pencil lines, which you won't be able to if I use a fainter pencil. I've also got a putty rubber here. And if you can hear any rhythmic noises in the background, it is my cat Gimlet. He does approve this channel, but his tail is thumping because he would like to sit on my lap, which is not overly convenient at the moment. I'm not going to do an in-depth drawing tutorial here because I have many of those on my channel already, but let's just have a look at this photograph. Now, it's slightly taller than it is wide. I've got a square board of paper here. I'm not even going to worry about that. I'm just going to make sure it's nice and large and in the middle. There is a slight, if we hold it level, there's a slight leftward tilt there, so I'll make a mark where I want the top of the flower to come and the base of the flower. I'll put one or two construction lines in before I start drawing the flower. So I've put the stem in, and also up here I've just made a mark for that angle between those topmost petals. I'm going to be thinking all the time about things coming back to this center line. I'm going to start by drawing this center line to this main petal here in the middle. And that's going to allow me to start thinking about the outside shape. As I start working on putting the petals in, I'll sketch and refine this until I'm happy, but the drawing really can be quite simple. Now, there's a tiny splash of yellow down to the base of my flower. It's very small, but it's also pretty important. It seems to light the whole thing up. So I'm going to put this in long before I go anywhere near the red, and I'm going to want a soft edge to it. So I'm going to start by going in with clean water. Then I'm going to use a colour from my floral set called Buttercup. A similar colour to this for you would be probably a cadmium yellow light. Something that's just got a little bit more warmth than a lemon. So I'm going to come in here with clean water, and this will stop me getting a really hard edge. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I have recently made my newest online course, which is a watercolor flower painting course. Now, I'm sure many of you probably think that YouTube is making me fabulously rich. Sadly, this is not the case, and most of my income actually comes from selling online courses because I have a background. Here I'm going in with a little watercolor pencil. I have a background in teaching real life classes for many years, so when the pandemic hit, it was second nature for me to start doing online courses, and they've been fairly successful for me. We have lots of good 5-star reviews. So there's a touch of green down here. I'm just using my brush there, fairly dry brush, just to blend this a little bit. And you'll see that putting the water on first has meant that we've got a beautiful soft edge here. Now the red does slightly go into the yellow, which will give us a little bit of an orange effect. But mostly I want to keep them separate, otherwise I'll lose this beautiful brightness. So next I'm going to let this area dry. Now at the top of this petal here, I've got a tiny area that's just turned over in the light. It's just tipping over. I'm going to use a very watered down Pyrrole red. So this is an interesting colour. It's quite scarlet, but it also has a hint of pink to it. I don't feel that I have one red in my set that will do this whole flower. So I'm going to mix the Pyrrole red in places with some permanent rose to get that strong area of pink to it. I can allow that to dry. Whilst that's drying, I'm going to place some of these background petals in, which are quite strong. Now, let me tell you what is in my latest course. And if you're just watching this video, it's actually on sale at the moment. So the cheapest my courses ever are is when they've just launched. Now, my courses are not $5. You may find many courses on the internet that are $5, but mine actually have a huge amount of work in them, so I do charge for my time. Neither are they $500, they are affordable. So this course, when it launches, will be $99. When it's full price, after the 2-week or so launch period, it will go up to its regular price of $159 US. Now, there may be future sales. I normally have a Boxing Day sale, but it will never be quite this cheap again because I always do the biggest discount on launch. Now, I'm taking my brush here and I've rinsed and dried it, and I'm just using this to lift out a little bit of the colour just so that we get that light effect there. And then I'm going to leave this petal alone. I will just pop this one in over here. And do you see how I'm avoiding touching these together so that we don't get running between petals? The one over here is a little darker. I do feel as well that it has a touch of pink to it, like so. It's possible on camera you can't see the difference between the pink and the red too much. I'm only putting a hint of it there. We'll get more on these foreground petals. Finally, I'm just going to take a little more light out of there. I'll want to let this dry before we do these other petals. I'll tell you more about what's in my new course as we go through. Now, this petal at the front here, I feel like it's the most important petal. It's where all the drama is. It's certainly the lightest one. So I'm going to do this one next. The underneath layer has dried. So I'm going to go in quite light. I'm also going to use a little bit of this watercolor pencil because they're fabulous for creating detail in flower paintings. Now, recently in my online courses, I've been doing something a bit new. I started with the Paint Any Landscape course. And what I've been doing is really slightly evil. I've been throwing people in at the deep end. So what I've been doing is getting them to paint a certain picture at the beginning of the course and then repaint the picture at the end. And the reason for this is it's really important to me that people see the benefit that they've got from a course and that they actually have, some concrete evidence of their progress, because isn't that what we all want? We all want to get better, don't we? So I start my newest course by getting people to paint magnolias. And unlike the Paint Any Landscape course where people repeated the painting at the end, I'm actually going to paint this one with them at the end. So it's a little more complicated than a landscape. So I'm actually going to take them through a full tutorial at the end. And with everything they've learned during the course, it should be easy to get a better result. Now you see, I just made a little drip there. Are we going to panic, ladies and gentlemen? No, we're not. We're just going to blot. No panicking, just blotting. So I'm taking this colour down here. Now, module 1 of my course is actually drawing. I'm going to change now to more of the red because this is a red tulip. It's just got hints of pink. And so by using both colours, we're going to get the most beautiful effect. I don't want to lose this yellow, so I'm going in here with some clean water and I'm just going to allow these colours to merge. Now, it's important when you're learning to draw flowers, not just to draw the flowers themselves, but also leaves. And of course, things like vases, those are really important to get right. Just putting a little bit more stronger pink in now. And controlling the water levels is very important here. You see, I'm not going in with drippy paint so that I've got that chance to control what's going on. So we'll be learning to draw vases in the course, all the ellipses and things that go with them. Did I just say module 1 was drawing? I meant, of course, module 2, because module 1 is, as always in my courses, materials, where I go through not only the materials I'm using in the course or that I want students to use, but also just materials that are particularly suitable for watercolour flower painting, because you do need to make a few adjustments. And then for module 3, we go on to composition. So that's different to drawing. So drawing is just, understanding how to make a shape like this one we've made on the paper. Composition is more about where things sit. Pretty easy with a large single flower like this. When we have multiple flowers and multiple elements, of course, it becomes more complex. Composition is often more about what not to do than what to do. I'm getting a slight drying line here, so I'm just taking a almost dry brush across this area. It's very important not to put a wet brush into damp because then we get a lot of bleeding going on. even if things go wrong, it's nearly always best to re-wet and put on a second layer, but I'm pretty happy with what I've got so far. At this point, I just want to pop in and remind you, could you please just press the like button for me? The thumbs up really makes a big difference to the YouTube algorithm, enables me to make more free videos here on YouTube and help more people to learn to paint and draw. I'm going to paint this petal at the back next, and at this stage this is very dry. It's actually been overnight, although it's just a video edit to you. It has actually dried overnight, so this is nice and dry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove some of the pencil. So if you see these lines here, I no longer need the pencil on these lines because the paint delineates them. So we want to get rid of pencil at the earliest stage possible because it can get trapped underneath the paint, which is fine in places, but you don't want too much of that if you can help it. I'm going to paint this petal at the back now. This is one of the darkest, strongest petals, so I'm going to go in with both the pink and the red. I'm going to take the pink kind of around the outside here where it might be a little lighter. So let me continue to tell you about my new course. After we finish learning about materials and drawing, the next module is colour mixing. So I'll be going through all of the colours that people commonly use. So we'll be looking at the reds and the yellows, but we're also going to look at things like shadow colours because colour mixing is really vital for flower painting. The main mistake that people make when painting flowers is to make them kind of appear dead, and the easiest way to do that is to get, too much brown in them, or to use heavy pigments, things like Payne's grey, when there really are much better shadow alternatives. And then, of course, there's the never-ending issue of greens and tube greens versus mixed greens, neither of which are wrong approaches, but it's just important to understand how to make the best of those. So in order to keep this area wet, it's become a little bit uneven. You can see we're starting to get a line form here. We're going to fix that in a moment. So just coming around the center here. Dried my brush slightly. I'm just going to take that out there. Wherever you've got uneven water levels or puddling, you will start to get back runs forming. What I can do now, whilst this is all wet, is go in with some thicker paint, and there's a slight hint of sort of central dark areas here. I'm also going to go nice and dark and just crisp up this line here. You can see the brush I'm using has a very sharp point. It's a nice new brush, and even though it's large, I can still work in quite small areas. Of course, if any of these petals dry lighter than I was expecting, it's really easy for me just to allow them to dry and take another layer over the top. I'm also in danger of getting a little drying line here, so I'm just going to even that out and allow this to dry. Now I need to work in an area that isn't wet, and we've got a little bit of a join here with this petal meets this one, so I'm going to do this one over here on the right. I'm going to add another colour because you can see here we have this dark blush of colour, and I would say it's very strongly sort of bluish purple. You could use a violet. I'm going to use a colour from my floral painting set called Delphinium, which is somewhere between ultramarine and purple. So the next module in my flower painting course is all about techniques. So before I even get you starting to paint flowers, we're going to actually practice techniques. And so things like controlling where the paint bleeds or doesn't bleed, techniques like this one we used here with the watercolor pencils, even some techniques to get things like pollen dust and blended areas like areas of shadow. Now in the course I'm going to show you maybe 8 or 9 of my favorite techniques, but there are many techniques that you can use for flower painting. So at the end of the course, there's actually, and that's not all of the modules, but at the end of the course, there's actually bonus materials. And what that does is it kind of collates some of my other materials that are free online. So I've got over 300 YouTube videos now. Amazing. How productive have I been? But it can be quite hard to find the exact one you want, even with them being in playlists. So at the end of the course, I collate a lot of other materials and also give you some free, copyright-free photographs so that you can get straight on after the course with painting more beautiful flowers. So we're going to use one of those bleeding techniques here, and I'm going to drop some wet paint along this edge here to allow it to bleed outwards. Once we've learnt techniques in Module 6, we actually start painting petals. So I go through painting individual petals on lots of different types of flowers. And when I was planning the course, people were asking me for flowers that aren't usually seen. So it's very easy to make a course and just paint the flowers that you are used to. Of course, I can't put every kind of flower in a course, but I've included a few more tropical ones. At least they're tropical from where I live. Things like hibiscus and morning glories. One of the petals is white, so we get to practice a white petal. Now, this has gone a little darker than the one in the picture, but you know what? I really like it. I'm just going to sweep out a bit of light along this edge, like so. And that will enable me to go in with my watercolor pencil and get a nice line. I'm not happy about this drying line that's forming here, so I'm just going to take a damp, not wet brush and just sweep along there. So module 6 is petals, and then in module 7 we do leaves, and I show you some of my favorite techniques for getting light veins on dark, dark veins on light, those little strange burnt areas where things have eaten your leaf, and then you'll get to practice some leaves. Now I'm pretty happy with that petal. I have a slight light line here where I swept along. Is this going to dry in a way that I'm happy with, or is it going to look a bit uncomfortable? It's always best just to wait. I don't need to rush in and try and fix this, because if it stays how it looks now, I'm going to be happy with it. People won't even notice. However, if it ends up so that it really doesn't look, it looks a bit uncomfortable or the drying lines are too harsh, then I can just go over the top with another layer of clean water and fix things from there. But don't overcorrect things. If they're really hardly anything, allow the beauty of the paint to do what it wants to. So I'm going to do this petal over here, and you might be wondering why I'm not pre-wetting these areas. Although pre-wetting can make things easier, it also is going to heavily dilute your paint. So I would rather work where I can on dry paper. It's a decision to be made. Of course, sometimes you need to pre-wet to get certain things going on, but I would rather, if I can, work on the dry paper. And of course, I'm going onto a pure white surface, and this is something that people often get wrong with painting flowers, is they'll try and put a background in first and then they're painting on top of greens, and that's disastrous because it's the opposite colour, pinks and reds, which are in so many colours you find in flower painting, and then of course you're in trouble. So I'm trying to play off light and dark here. So wherever there's a dark area like there is at the top here, I'm going to go in a little bit lighter so that one petal is always showing up against another. I'm going to sweep this down quickly. Nothing's getting a chance to dry. And then I'm going to go in again with my wet Delphinium colour. So after I teach you in the course to paint individual flowers and leaves using the techniques that we learn, I then take you onto a smaller painting where we have several flowers. This is going to get you used to which order you paint things in, and also adding in those leaves and stems so that everything hangs together nicely. In the final module, we look at backgrounds and vases. So I give you some tips about how to draw vases in the drawing module. Then we're going to look at how to actually paint them, how to deal with things like glass. And I'm also going to give you a few of my most favorite background techniques. So again, using the watercolor pencil, put that line in, and you saw how I swept out a little bit of the paint. That just allowed this line to show up. See how much lighter the one over here is already drying? It's important to remember how much watercolors lighten as they dry. So whilst I'm filming this tutorial, I'm actually also filming samples for my flower painting course, and this is the white hollyhock petals here. So I've already mixed this green. There's a darker and a lighter version of it, so I'm just going to use what's in my palette for the green of my tulip stem. I'm going to start actually with a little extra yellow in the middle. Now, when you have something that's tubular, it's a really good idea to go darker, either along one edge or along both. You'll also find, because of the structure of the flower, there's often some shadow underneath the flower head. So let's go here. And this green is mixed from Phthalo blue. There's also a little bit of Diarylide in it. There's a little bit of a colour called Marigold, which is a light orange from my flower painting set. And I've just dipped into a slightly warmer yellow called Buttercup for the middle. And let's go dark under here. You see how this will give the contrast against the yellow above? What's also effective is rinsing and drying the brush and taking out a lighter highlight in the middle. And in this way, we get a beautiful tubular looking stem for our tulip. So I've got paint on everything, and this is the point where I have to think, is this actually finished? Now, also forgive my chipped nail. Most of you know I do martial arts training in my evenings, and this is what happened last night. They actually need doing, but my nail girl is more popular than Taylor Swift, and I just can't get an appointment at the moment. I think she also earns more than Taylor Swift. So what I want to do is think about, does everything show up? You know, there's a lot of areas where things could have a stronger contrast between each other, but I also have to weigh this up with the idea of what will happen if I go back into these areas. Now I do want to just go a little darker on this petal here. There's not a lot of contrast on this, so I'm fairly safe to re-wet it. I'm also looking at those areas where the purple is and thinking if I'm happy with them. And I think overall I am. There's almost a hint of drying lines around some of them. You really have to be careful with whether or not going back into something will improve it or not improve it, and also how experienced you are as an artist, because I'm pretty good at going back into stuff, but if you're a beginner and you really don't quite know what you're doing, it could actually be pretty disastrous to do that. So I'm going to go here, and you see that by adding more colour here, I'm just ramping up the contrast between this front petal and the one behind. I'll just have a last look around my picture, see if I want to make any more adjustments, but I'm pretty much happy with it. I'll put a picture up so you can see the whole thing. So do let me know in the comments if you're going to give this little painting a go. And don't forget to pop in the video description. Not only is there lots of free stuff down there that you can download, but if you're watching this video and it's just come out, then you still have a chance to grab that really huge discount off of my watercolor flower painting course. You're not signing up for anything by clicking the link. You can just find out lots more information. And if you do love painting flowers as much as me, I think you're going to enjoy this next video.